we're Melburnians.
Yeah.
We're
Born and
very
bred.
proud Victorians, and we are terrified in our own city, and we know we're not alone, and we know from the backing we've had from all our listeners who have reached out to us, and we're so lucky and honoured to be in a position to have these microphones, and we are your show, Melbourne, and we will address the things that concern you. And over the last few weeks, we've had our petition, Bring on Bail Reform for Repeat Offenders in Victoria. Over 116,000 of you have signed this petition. We said we would not stop beating the drum until there was a result. Well, we are about to have the Premier of Victoria join us in the studio. I think she's walking in now, is that right? And we know that she has an announcement to make.
Yep.
We said we wouldn't talk about this with the Premier until there was change. She's coming through reception.
We were adamant about that too, weren't we?
And just before the Premier comes in, just a big thank you to everybody, not only obviously who signed it, who's added their voice to it, because there are so many victims out there. So many people have suffered through home invasions, aggravated assaults, carjackings, theft, intimidation in supermarkets, in shopping centres. We have repeat youth offenders that have run riot in this city, and we've heard you and thank you. And the Premier is walking into the studio. Jacinta Allan, welcome to the show.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
We are, as you know, very animated,
Yes.
very passionate. And I want to say to you, and I think you're aware of this, I didn't actually want you on the show until there was change, because like
enough.
so many Melburnians, we didn't want to hear talk anymore. Yep. We didn't want to hear reviews are happening, we're looking into it. We want action. Enough is enough. And we know that overnight you have and you've chosen to come here to make this announcement to Melbourne. What is happening?
Well, thank you, Fifi. And I do want to acknowledge you've given voice to what is a really serious issue. And I do acknowledge that the current laws, they don't meet community expectation, firstly, and we are seeing too much. We're seeing too many repeat offenders get bail. And I've been listening to your program, listening to a lot of people, which is why we've been acting with urgency to be able to say to you today, we are bringing in the toughest bail laws in the country. And there's a combination of factors that lead to that. The first is we are putting community safety first and foremost in bail decisions, putting the safety of the community front and centre. And we are also reversing that change where remand or bail was seen as a last resort for youth offending. So that's a key change, and a key change that we can make immediately. Also too, we're bringing in tougher tests. And this is one of the key issues as well. Some of the things you've been talking about on your program, those aggravated home invasions, the carjacking, the tests haven't been tough enough. So we're toughening those tests to make it harder to get bail.
What are those tests?
Yeah, so
Because we got told by a lot of people that there's like 11 boxes, and if they don't tick one, they get to go out on bail. And there's been up to 40 times I've been on bail. There's a 67 guy on bail. What are the tests? Because the test, we want no grey area. If your test is to abide by the law. If you abide by the law, you don't have to go to court. If you break the law, you go to jail.
Yep.
There should be no, what's the test?
So Fev, let me go back to where I said community safety is first and foremost. So that sits over the top of all the tests. The system has to be satisfied that community safety is not at risk should someone be granted bail. And that's a really important change. That's flipping the system. That's putting a jolt through the system to put community safety front and centre. And then what it is also, some of this behaviour, and we have seen it really emerge, and again, this has been a feature of the conversations you've been having on your program, the home invasions, the agbergs, the carjacking. There's been a real increase in those areas. So we're putting those tests tougher. There's standards called exceptional circumstances, unacceptable risk circumstances. So the process has to take into consideration how much of a risk you are should you be released on bail. But go back to the start, community safety is front and centre.
And Jacinta, is that putting the victims, because that's what it seems like, the offenders and re-offenders have been put before the people that are being terrorised and victimised. So now are you saying that we won't have somebody out on bail 67 times breaking and entering into a home or carjacking somebody.
Yeah.
That can't happen anymore.
Well, this is absolutely my expectation. Now, the courts are going to be given a very clear sense of the priorities of the community and the government. Community safety first, tougher tests. So yes, it will be harder and harder, and it is my expectation that we will see more people refuse bail.
Now, the relaxing of the bail laws in 2023, is that viewed now as a mistake? Because it does seem like this has been, and I mean, I don't need to point out to you, but kids on the street offending every night, invading homes, it's not the Melbourne I grew up in. It seems like a complete surge over the last 12 to 24 months. Is that what happened, do you think?
Well, I'll say this. I'm the Premier today, and I've been listening, and it's been made very clear to me, and my own experiences. You don't have to go far for someone to tell you their own experience. So, considering that experience, considering too the horror, like I'm a parent as well, the horror of thinking that your kids are sleeping while someone's in your home. So that's why we've acted. It is absolutely clear that not only are the current laws out of step with community expectation, they're out of step with what needs to change. And that's why we're bringing in these tougher changes.
Now, why did it take this long? Because I think that's the burning question, and so many people that have had these experiences and they are victims now of assault, home invasion, their kids can't sleep at night. Why did it take this long?
Look, last month I directed the Police Minister and the Attorney General to look at all options, which is why we've come back today with acting with urgency with the toughest bail laws in the country, because we have been listening. We have seen that change that you've just described. We have seen that change, and it's been an unacceptable change.
And when will these come into effect? Is this overnight? Is this from tomorrow we're safe in our city?
So the laws, the earliest they can go to the Parliament is next week. And I will be introducing legislation to the Parliament next week. And I would, it's up to the Parliament to pass the laws, but I'll be saying it very clearly to the Parliament. We need to pass these laws with a matter of urgency, because these changes can come into effect, particularly the focus on community safety, as soon as the laws are passed.
Premier, what do you say we've had a lot of police officers and they do a wonderful job, and we went out with Trinity, and I think you know that we hit the streets early mornings for a couple of days, and they said it's usually there's about a 300 youth problem, about 300 kids that they keep arresting, and they keep getting back out, and they've reached out to us a lot and said, we don't know why we're going to work. Like, what are we doing? I loved my job. I've been in it for 8 years. Now I don't want to work there anymore. What do you say to our Victorian police to keep doing what they're doing?
Well, I say thank you. Like, as you've said, you've seen firsthand. I speak to many officers in Victoria Police. I know how hard they work, how committed they are. Their focus is on community safety. What I'd say, two things, is I thank them for the work they do, and today we're backing that work with the toughest bail laws in the country.
And just on the police as well, we had Shane Patton in, who obviously is not there anymore, and it's come out in the media that was he a scapegoat? Because he did present this to you about 3 months ago to change the bail laws. It got rejected.
Well, what we're bringing in today is a tougher test.
Yeah.
Is tougher than what was proposed. Of course, we've taken on board the advice of Victoria Police.
Yeah.
We've listened to the Victorian community.
Was he a scapegoat?
No, absolutely not. What we have introduced, what we are bringing to you today, though, is tougher than what was proposed.
Yeah.
Now, Jacinta, the other thing is, and you would see this, all we see from screenshots of home CCTV footage is hooded offenders with machetes.
Yeah.
How are we selling? How are people able to acquire machetes in Victoria?
Well, with the passage of legislation through the Parliament, which we'll also be putting in next week, we're going to ban machetes. We'll be the first state to ban machetes. It is, again, horrifying, those images to think that there are people carrying these knives and coming into your own home is horrific. And that's why we're bringing in the ban on machetes into the Parliament next week.
And obviously, we did have a caller earlier today say banning machetes is obviously an integral step, but then they'll just go for other knives. So the message has to be to these repeat youth offenders, you're not bringing weapons into anyone's home, you're not stealing anyone's car. People, and I think this is we've been so passionate about, Melbournians are doing it tough already, and you know that better than anyone. Cost of living is hell. Families are having two parents working jobs. You know, that when we were growing up in the 80s and 90s, that didn't have to happen. Now, people are doing everything to save every penny, not to have their cars stolen, their kids' piggy banks taken. we are, and you can see fed up. And the fact that you are bringing in bail reform as an act of urgency, we appreciate that you have seen and you've responded to particularly our petition and our listeners who are so fired up about this. But we just, I guess, back to the point, any teenager picks up a weapon of any sort, walks into someone's home, the test that Fev was referring to. So to be allowed out to reoffend, you'd have to have a pretty impressive sob story. I mean, you shouldn't really have any, to be honest.
Again, that's why community safety, we're flipping it.
Yes.
We're flipping it, putting community safety front and centre, making it tougher for these sorts of offences. Also, too, alongside banning machetes, we're giving police stronger knife search powers. So going to your broader point about knives in general, giving police tougher search powers, again, backing in the work they're doing on our streets every single day.
Because we have been approached by so many police officers, and I think their frustration. I was at a shopping centre recently, and they came up to have a chat with me and just said, "We catch them, and then the next day they're doing the same crimes." Can you recognise that this has all been insanity? I feel like it's been insane in Victoria for the last few years on this.
It is. I absolutely have shared the frustration again. Not only am I a Premier who's been listening to the Victorian community, I've been listening to victims of crime, I've been reading the emails, reading the letters, talking and listening to people. I'm also a human and a parent as well. And those, when you see some of those images, when you hear those experiences, it's horrific. It hits you. It hits you in the guts, and it has made me determined to take this action.
We've also been we're getting contacted by a lot of people, Premier. It's been unbelievable. It's been like a tsunami. I think your government talks about the prison system, especially like Parkville for youth criminals, saying there's not enough beds. But we've been told that there is heaps of beds. Yeah. There's a lot of beds there, but they cost money, and the government doesn't have money. How do you allocate the money? Because this is probably the most important thing going on at the moment, because every single Victorian is scared at night to go to sleep, because they think that a reoffender who's been let out on bail is going to come and rob their house. I think there's Cherry Creek. There's 140 beds. There's only 40 being taken up. There's only 90 at Parkville. And Parkville's like a little resort. It's got a pool. It's got a gym. They can order pizza. They can get McDonald's. Like, how is that possible?
Well, there's two things again. So firstly, as a result of this, there will be more people in our prison system, and our prison system does have the capacity. There is the beds there, and we'll be resourcing those beds. This is a demonstration of just how important this is to me and my government. We'll put those resources towards this priority.
Jacinta Allan, I said a few weeks ago I didn't want you on the show without any change, because we couldn't, and I, like so many of my friends in the community that I and Fev represent, listening to our show, we just couldn't hear it anymore. The fact that we are now about to have the toughest bail laws in the country, magistrates and judges will be legislated to put community first. Just want to reach out again to everyone listening, because this is people power, Premier, isn't it? We've really banged this drum, and we appreciate that this is now going to be legislated as of next week. Thank you for coming on the show.
As I said, thank you.
You were walking into a bit of a fiery furnace.
Do you have a message for the youth criminals out there? What would your message be to the criminals?
Well, ideally, we don't want them to do it in the first place.
Yeah.
Stay in school. Stay connected to your community. They're the best ways to avoid ending up in this situation. Reach out for help. There is services there. That's really, I mean, I don't want this to sound too,
I'd just say if you break the law, you're going to jail.
Well, there's that. If you break the law, go to jail, but don't do it in the first place.
Yeah.
Stay in school. But if you do break the law, well, there is
coming down hard.
Yep. And Melbourne, you've spoken. Toughest bail laws in the country. It is happening. Premier Jacinta Allan, thank you for coming into the studio.
Thanks for your time this morning.